Hey everyone, and welcome to WDIM News, my weekly podcast where I talk about sci-fi stuff and some other stuff. My name is Eric. Thank you very much for joining me today. I feel like last week was kind of a slow news week, possibly due to the time of year, with kids getting out of school and people traveling, or possibly due to that pesky writer strike that is still going on in Hollywood. But I did find some pretty cool Star Trek news, including an update on my first live stream on this channel, which will be this week, and I will be playing the new game, Star Trek Resurgence, during the stream. Also this past week, I found an interesting response from filmmaker John Carpenter at a Q&A session after he was asked about the future of one of his most popular films. And to mine, and probably most people's surprise, he hinted that a sequel may be forthcoming. And no, I'm not going to be talking about the future of Halloween or Michael Myers, but rather one of his classic works of science fiction. There were also 3 new trailers released this week of projects that I am very excited for and that I think you should be watching, including one for the soon-to-be-released 6th season of the sci-fi anthology series Black Mirror, which tells us a lot about the upcoming season, so I want to do a bit of a deep dive into that because I'm a really big fan. But before I get into all that, please remember to hit that like button to help support the work that I do. It's free for you, but really does a lot to help my channel. Also, don't forget to subscribe as well, so YouTube will let you know when my stuff comes out. So first, let's talk about the Star Trek news from the past week. Again, there wasn't much, but a couple of cool things did happen. First, on Paramount Plus, they decided to once again release all the movies from Star Trek on their service. If you are a member of the streaming service Paramount Plus, you may have noticed that over a year ago, the 10 films from the TOS era and the TNG era were removed, and all we had were the 3 films from the Kelvinverse. Now, if you are also a member of the HBO Max, now Max streaming service, you know that all of the Star Trek films have been available on HBO Max. So it's kind of weird when Paramount Plus removed them from their service because they have touted themselves as the home of Star Trek, you know. And also when the Paramount Plus service launched, all the movies were available and then suddenly 10 movies were taken away. So it's kind of weird. Like fans like myself were wondering if Star Trek was possibly getting sold to HBO and that Paramount Plus wouldn't be releasing it in the future. Like it was just really weird. Well, now to coincide possibly with the release of the 2nd season of Strange New Worlds, on June 1st of 2023, the 10 films from the TOS era and the TNG era were added back to Paramount Plus. So now all 13 films are there, as well as every series. So now Paramount Plus is once again the home for all Star Trek, which is cool because I know that a lot of us subscribe to Paramount Plus just for the Star Trek content. So to have to also be a member of HBO Max, or Max, sorry, I keep saying HBO Max, it was kind of disheartening as a fan of Star Trek have to have subscriptions to 2 separate services just to get all that content. But now, if you don't want Max anymore, you can remove it and you can just have Paramount Plus for all the Star Trek content, which I think is pretty cool. I would be surprised if they remove it again. Whenever a streaming service removes content, it's always because of money. Like 99% of the time, it's because they don't want to pay somebody, or maybe people aren't watching the movies enough to substantiate paying whatever production company they have to for the rights to air that movie. But I'm glad that now all Star Trek content is back on Paramount Plus, and hopefully it will stay there for a while. Speaking of Star Trek content, now on YouTube, you can watch the entire 1st season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This just happened. I noticed this last week on my front page on YouTube. All of a sudden, all these Star Trek Strange New Worlds episodes started popping up, and they were not bootlegs. They were actually from the Paramount Plus YouTube site. So you can go to the Paramount Plus YouTube site and watch the 1st season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds for free. There will be ads, but there are also ads on Paramount Plus, even if you pay for it. So either way, you're going to see some advertisements. Just like what I just said about Paramount Plus, this on YouTube is probably only available in the United States. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on in the other countries, but I know that this is available in the US and might not be available in other countries. But if you're in the United States and have Paramount Plus and YouTube, then you can watch all Star Trek content, and you can watch the 1st season of Strange New Worlds for free. Now, this is not going to be forever. They have said that they're going to remove the 1st season of Strange New Worlds on June 30th at midnight. So you have just 1 month to catch up on that 1st season. I definitely would if you have not yet. And in fact, this may be a way for Paramount to gauge the popularity of Strange New Worlds in, the zeitgeist, in the more of a free market space like YouTube. So if you are planning to watch the 1st season of Strange New Worlds again, I might suggest watching it on YouTube just because those numbers may help Paramount decide on future Star Trek content, and it may show them how popular the show really is. I think it's a great series. I hope it gets way more popular this season, and I'm definitely looking forward to season 2. I have done a couple of trailer breakdowns already, so if you want to watch those, definitely check those out. I've linked those in the description below, and I will be covering every episode after they are released. So if you are a fan of the show, make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of that information. But let me know, are you going to be watching the first season of Strange New Worlds again? Are you going to be watching it on YouTube? And are you happy that all Star Trek content is back on Paramount Plus and they are the true home of Star Trek? Now to segue into the true home of Star Trek on YouTube, and that is this channel right here. And as I stated in my podcast last week, I will be doing a live stream for the first time on my channel while I'm playing the new Star Trek game, Resurgence. If you don't know anything about that game, it's like a Telltale style game, which means it's more of a choose your own adventure than a MMORPG like the Star Trek Online game. So it should be a lot of fun. And even if you don't care what I have to say, you can watch the first hour or so of Star Trek Resurgence and decide for yourself if you want to buy the game. I do have to give a big thank you to everyone who commented last week in my podcast. I said that if I got 20 comments saying the phrase Almoraine124, I would do this live stream, and I got well over 20 comments saying that phrase, so I really appreciate it, and I hope this live stream is going to be a lot of fun. I've never done a live stream before. I've watched plenty, so because I watch something, that must mean I can do it, right? I mean, that's basically my thinking about everything. So if you are looking forward to this live stream and you will be joining me, it will take place this Thursday, June 8th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I hope that you can join me. It'll be a lot of fun. Like I said, I've never done one before, so it could be a train wreck, but either way, it should be fun. I'll be answering your questions while I'm online. And if you want to know how much money I make on YouTube, what I like about YouTube, other content I watch, other content creators I don't like, just hit me up. I hope you can join me, and it should be a lot of fun. So now let's talk about the story I found concerning John Carpenter. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. If you're not familiar with him, he rose to popularity really in the 80s with the Halloween films, but he did a lot of other films as well, like Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China. And this film that we're going to be talking about right now, and that is The Thing. So in 1982, The Thing was released, directed by John Carpenter, from a screenplay by Bill Lancaster, and it was based actually on a novel by John W. Campbell Jr. from 1938 titled Who Goes There? And the movie and the story is about a group of American researchers in Antarctica who encounter an extraterrestrial that assimilates, then imitates other organisms. It was a real groundbreaker at the time. I remember watching it. I mean, I was only 3 when it came out. When I was old enough to watch it, I remember really liking it. I really liked the violence, if that makes sense, because the violence is kind of silly. It's very practical. All the effects are very practical, and like some of the forms that the thing takes are really like out there, like this weird like spider creature and stuff like that, and a lot of other weird stuff. So if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you definitely should. It's one of the, in my opinion, it's one of the best science fiction movies of the 80s, and I watch it whenever I get a chance. And it looks like we might eventually get a sequel to this film. Now, this story comes from the site creepycatalog.com, which I never would have checked if not for this story. But the quote actually comes from a Q&A from a convention that's known as the Texas Frightmare Weekend. So if you were there, this is from that convention. When somebody asked John Carpenter about a sequel to any of his movies, and in this case, The Thing, he stated this: "I've been sworn to secrecy, okay? Because there may be, I don't know if there will be, there may be a Thing 2. Now, I doubt that he's referencing the Dr. Seuss characters, but rather a sequel to his 1982 film. A direct sequel to The Thing has been a rumor for a long time. Carpenter himself has spoken about the idea of continuing the story as recently as February and October of 2022. In those interviews, he seems interested in the idea, but didn't go so far as to indicate that anything was actually being developed. But at this panel, Carpenter did say that there might have been discussions between him and Kurt Russell, though that was in response to a question about a potential Big Trouble in Little China sequel, which Carpenter may also be doing. I think that this is really interesting. I'm also a fan of Big Trouble in Little China. I don't know if you consider that sci-fi. I guess that's more fantasy. You may recall that in 2011, a prequel to his movie was released but it was really weird because it was also called The Thing. So they have a movie called The Thing, and then the prequel to that movie was also called The Thing. So I think it was kind of confusing to fans. I know the first time that I watched it, I was not sure what was going on. Like, I knew it wasn't a reboot as soon as the movie started, but the movie was called The Thing. So I, not knowing a whole lot about the movie before going in, I thought that it was a reboot. And then, of course, the movie goes on, and about a half hour in, you could tell that, this is definitely something different. Although I did like the movie, it starred Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Edgerton. And if you didn't see that one, the movie had to do with a group of Americans and a group of people from Norway coming together to after they found like a radio signal, I think, under a block of ice. And it turns out to be this alien creature. But I didn't really think it was as good as the original. And actually, while I was watching that movie, the same thought kind of popped into my head when I heard about this sequel is the best thing about the 1982 version of The Thing is the ending. For me, the tension created by the ending of Keith David and Kurt Russell staring each other down, that's the best part of the movie for me. And I don't know how you recreate that. That's like a lightning in the bottle kind of thing for me. And I don't know how you can recreate that in a sequel. I know that they definitely did not do that in the prequel. They may have attempted to. There are a lot of homages to the 1982 film, but I don't think that they created the correct amount of tension that that film had. And I'm not sure if a sequel will be able to do that anyway. But when it comes to John Carpenter, and I say this with the utmost respect, John Carpenter likes making money. I mean, I know that like everybody likes making money, but I have actually seen John Carpenter speak a couple of times. And when people ask him about the future of projects that he's done, his response is always in the vein of, I like getting checks from the mailbox. I like people paying me for the work that I've done. And it may be because he's got a little chip on his shoulder because he didn't gain as much notoriety in his younger career that he may have wanted. Like he's aged kind of like a fine wine, and I think many more people appreciate him in the 2000s forward than did, in the 70s and 80s when he was really trying to make it. So he may have a little chip on his shoulder about that, and because of that, I think that he is very willing to sell off his properties if, somebody wants to do something with it. So in that case, I think that if there is a chance to make a sequel to this movie, that John Carpenter will be all for it, whether he's involved or whether he's not involved, because like I said, he likes making money. Again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I do respect the man very much. I've seen him talk many times, and if you have seen John Carpenter talk, you may know what I'm talking about, because I'm sure he probably said something about it in that Q&A session. But I do respect the man, and I guess my point is just, if there is a way to make a sequel, I don't think John Carpenter will stand in the way. As an aside, I also like the potential of a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China that would include Kurt Russell. Now, including Kurt Russell in a sequel to The Thing may be a little tricky, and without going into spoilers, I can't really discuss why, but if you've seen the 1982 film, you know that if they do include Kurt Russell in a sequel, then it kind of changes the ending a little bit, and I think kind of takes away from that movie rather than enhancing it. And with a sequel, you never want to do that. You just want to, enhance the thing that came before. You don't want to make it lesser. So I think that including Kurt Russell in a sequel to The Thing might not be a good idea, but including Kurt Russell in a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China may be awesome, and I would love to see that. Now, in Big Trouble in Little China, my favorite thing about that movie is the aesthetic, like the neon and like the 80s feel of it. And I really like that. And if they could recreate that, I would be all for a Big Trouble in Little China sequel. So let me know, what do you think of this idea? Would you rather see a sequel to The Thing? Would you rather see a sequel to Big Trouble in Little China? Do you think we should just let sleeping dogs lay and not make sequels to either? What do you think of these projects, and are you excited for either? So next, let's talk about some trailers that were released last week. And first, I want to talk about the trailer for the upcoming 6th season of Black Mirror. Now, if you're not familiar with Black Mirror, it is a Netflix series and is a British anthology television series created by Charlie Brooker. Individual episodes explore a diversity of genres, but most are set in a near-future dystopia with sci-fi technology involved as a type of speculative fiction. The series is based on the Twilight Zone and uses technology to comment on contemporary social issues. Most episodes are written by Brooker, with heavy involvement by the executive producer, Annabelle Jones. So, if you've never seen it before, there are 5 seasons so far, including one Christmas special and one interactive film. Now, the interactive film is something really crazy, and I think that everybody should watch it. It's called Bandersnatch, and it's very ambitious and it's really cool. I mean, is it a great movie? I don't think it's a great movie, but I think as something that's a standalone thing to just do if you've never heard about it or you've never seen it or anything like that, it's kind of like an art project. Like if you've ever gone to a museum just to see like an art project or see something like that, I would kind of classify it as that more than like something you just sit down and binge or with a bowl of popcorn or something. It's really interesting. And besides that film, like I stated, there's 5 seasons. I have seen every episode so far, and if you have not watched Black Mirror, my advice always is to just get through the first season because there are episodes that are shocking, there are episodes that will make you think, and there are episodes that are really out there. And there's one episode in the first season that is really, really shocking and disturbing. And you kind of just have to get past that one. I don't think they ever reached that level again in any episode going forward. But if you ever seen Black Mirror, you know exactly what episode I'm talking about already. So if you're going to watch Black Mirror, just get through that first season. You know, just commit to the first season no matter what you see. And I'm pretty confident that after the whole first season, you'll like Black Mirror and you'll move on to further episodes. But there are some great episodes. I mean, if you're a Star Trek fan, there is a specific episode. I can't remember the name of the episode because it's the name of the ship, but it's a specific Star Trek parody episode, and it is not like Galaxy Quest. I mean, it is something. So if you're a Star Trek fan, definitely watch Black Mirror. I think you'll like it. The series is mostly filmed in Britain. I think they did film one season or a few episodes in the United States. So there are a lot of British actors, but a lot of American actors are in it too. And it's really cool to see a lot of these actors play parts that you wouldn't expect and see them do some pretty crazy stuff. So Black Mirror is a series that does release all at once. So it's easy to binge. And all 5 episodes of season 6 will be released on June 15th, which is the same day that the second season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds begins. So you can watch the first episode of Strange New Worlds, and then you can binge a whole 5 episodes of Black Mirror if that's something you want to do. Like I said, I highly recommend it. We have plenty of time until the season starts for you to start binging it now if you're looking for something to binge. And I think it's really good. And if you're a sci-fi fan, I think you'll really enjoy it. So the latest trailer for Black Mirror season 6 does tell us a lot about the upcoming season without really giving away any spoilers. This is an anthology series, so every episode is different. New cast, new characters. They have referenced parts of episodes in other episodes before, but I don't think we've ever had a full crossover or any kind of sequel. I don't know. It's been a while since I've watched every episode. So with this newest trailer, we got episode titles, and from the episode titles and the short preview, I think we can kind of figure out what's going on. So the first episode is titled Joan is Awful, and it stars Annie Murphy, who played Alexis on Schitt's Creek, if you watch that hilarious show. And and this episode also stars Salma Hayek and Michael Cera. And it appears that this episode is about Annie Murphy's character finding a bingeable series on a Netflix parody subscription service that is about her own life, where she is played by the actress Salma Hayek. Another thing that Black Mirror is known for is being meta and referencing things that they themselves do. And this is definitely going to be one of those episodes. And it looks really awesome. I mean, in the trailer, they even show like that the parody subscription service has the same colors and the same, sound that Netflix makes when they're doing trailers. And Salma Hayek is really playing up her character and playing up being an actress. So it's one of those things where an actress is actually playing herself. Michael Cera looks to be playing some kind of dork, and Michael Cera plays a pretty good dork. So I think that this episode will start the season off really well. And Annie Murphy is hilarious. She looks very neurotic in the trailer. So I think this is going to be a home run. The next episode is titled Lock Henry, and it stars Daniel Portman, who you may know as Podrick from Game of Thrones, and John Hannah, who you may remember as Jonathan from the Mummy film series. He was Evie's brother, the one who always got them into trouble. And this episode looks to be about someone creating a documentary about a serial killer. So again, a very meta kind of episode. Netflix has made a lot of money on documentaries about serial killers. I think that one of the ways they got really popular is from a documentary about a serial killer that actually went back to court after the documentary aired and gained popularity. So it looks like this episode is going to be referencing that and how these documentaries become so popular and how the public shapes the outcomes. I really like Podrick from Game of Thrones, so I'm excited to see this actor do more things, and this episode should be pretty good. This next episode looks really cool. It's the third episode, and it's called Beyond the Sea, and it stars Aaron Paul, who most everybody knows from Breaking Bad, and Josh Hartnett, Kate Mara, and Rory Culkin. That is the Culkin that is not the Home Alone Culkin or the Succession Culkin. So this episode looks like it might take place in space, but I have a feeling this might be an episode about virtual reality. There are quite a few Black Mirror episodes about virtual reality. That's probably the theme that they touch on the most. And from the trailer, it looks like this might be it. So in the trailer, we see that Aaron Paul and Josh Hartnett are astronauts, and Paul's character relieves Hartnett's character, which causes him to suddenly wake up in like a bed at home. So that's what makes me think that either both or just one of these settings is set in virtual reality. Now, Aaron Paul, besides Breaking Bad, also starred in the sci-fi series Westworld, which was also about virtual reality at a certain point. So it would be very meta for him to be referencing that as well in this episode. So again, I love the space episodes that Black Mirror has done. They haven't done a ton of them, but the ones that they have done have been home runs. And the virtual reality episodes are pretty good too. So again, really looking forward to this episode. I'm a big fan of Aaron Paul. I would like to see him in more stuff, and hopefully this leads to him being in more things. The next episode, the fourth episode of the season, is titled Maisie Day, and it stars Zazie Bates as a member of like the paparazzi, but the TMZ paparazzi, you know, the ones that like look for upskirt shots and stuff like that. If you're not familiar with the actress, she starred in the Joaquin Phoenix The Joker movie, and she was also in the movie Deadpool 2. I'm a big fan of her in both those films, and this looks pretty good. It looks like one of those where she's kind of looking at her life and looking at the damage that she's done as what she is and what her life means and stuff like that. So should be pretty cool. And again, the actress is really good. So I'm looking forward to this episode as well. And then the fifth episode looks really kind of crazy because it starts out by saying Red Mirror presents Demon 79. Now, I don't remember this Red Mirror presents thing ever showing up before. So this may be a twist on Black Mirror. And because it's Red Mirror, maybe this is more bloody. Maybe this is more horror oriented. The trailer for this one looks crazy. It looks like it's kind of shot in the 70s grindhouse style, or maybe part of it is. And it's about a woman who may be insane. I mean, in certain parts of the trailer, she's killing people brutally. And another part, she's talking with an angel. And another part, her eyes gloss over. And it looks like she's got like solid blue eyes or cloudy eyes or something like that. It looks really crazy, but I'm guessing that this episode will be the craziest of the season and possibly more horror driven than the other episodes. So, like I mentioned, there are some crazy episodes of Black Mirror, and this may be the crazy episode this season. I'm glad they put it at the last episode because sometimes when you put it at the beginning, people just stop right there and they won't even give the episodes a chance. So if this episode is their, home run swing episode where they try something crazy, I'm glad that it's at the back end of the season. But it does look like it will be interesting, and I will be watching it. So let me know, are you a fan of Black Mirror? Will you be watching the upcoming season? Have you had any plans to binge it before the season starts? Let me know, because like I said, I'm a really big fan of Black Mirror. I'm be covering it once it does get released on this channel and going through, my review and what I think of it. So make sure that if you are a fan of Black Mirror, you are subscribed so you see that video when it comes out. So next, I want to talk about a show that is not sci-fi at all, but I think is hilarious. And I know that a lot of people right now are just looking for new shows to watch, and with the writer's strike, that need is going to increase and increase when there are less new films and programs available. So this trailer was for the upcoming series, The Righteous Gemstones. Now, if you're not familiar, this was first released in 2019 and created by Danny McBride for what was then HBO Max and is now Max. Now, if you're not a fan of Danny McBride, I hear you. I'm not necessarily a fan of Danny McBride either. I've never seen Eastbound and Down. I've seen some of his movies, and I think he's hit or miss. Like, I think that in Pineapple Express, he was really good, but in other things I've seen him in, I'm not a big fan. And while he is pretty good in The Righteous Gemstones, and he is kind of the lead, I don't think he's the best part of this show. But for a Danny McBride series, I think he does a pretty good job. But all in all, I think the ensemble cast is what makes this show great. And there are some standout performances. So that cast includes John Goodman, who kind of plays the father of all the kids. And the three main kids are Danny McBride, actress Edie Patterson, who you may not know, but she is freaking hilarious in this series. And Adam Devine plays their youngest brother, and he is also pretty good. If you've ever seen Adam Devine, like in Workaholics, he's kind of similar to that character in the show, but it's like if that character didn't become a stoner in high school and instead got really into religion. That's kind of the character Adam Devine plays in this. And if you've ever seen him in like his cheerleader movie stuff, he kind of does some of that stuff too, which is pretty funny. But in my opinion, the star of this series, besides Edie Patterson, is Walton Goggins. If you follow me on this channel, you know I'm a huge Walton Goggins fan, and he is freaking hilarious. He plays a character called Baby Billy Freeman. He actually plays a character that's older than anybody else, like almost elderly, and he's just hilarious. I can't even say many of his lines on my podcast because it'll get flagged by YouTube, but he is worth the price of admission, really. And much like Black Mirror, I will say that if you've never watched The Righteous Gemstones before, and you maybe plan to watch them after hearing this, just like Black Mirror, get through the first season. Totally different reason. I mean, there are some shocking scenes in The Righteous Gemstones, but nothing compared to Black Mirror. But I remember the first time I watched The Righteous Gemstones, I was not really into it until halfway through the first season. The first few episodes did not really catch me. So if you're like in episode 3, episode 4, and you're like, ugh, why am I watching this? Just get through that first season, and I can almost guarantee that you'll continue watching the second season, and you'll watch the third season when it comes out. So unlike Netflix, HBO doesn't normally release seasons all at once. So the first episode of season 3 will be released on June 18th, and then the next 8 episodes will be released every week. So a total of 9 episodes, just like these first 2 seasons. And from the trailer, it looks like Danny McBride has taken over the family business from his father, and he is failing at it, of course. And so to rescue them, they turn to like snake charmers and radicals and gun enthusiasts to try and save their church. If you don't know anything about the Righteous Gemstones, it's about a family of evangelical preachers who are uber popular, like they're multi-millionaires, and they live on a huge location, I think in Georgia, I believe is where most of this series takes place. And just a lot of crazy stuff happens. But like I said, it's really good. Edie Patterson, I think, is a star of it. Walton Goggins is a star. Adam Devine is pretty good too. And there are a lot of guest stars that show up too that are pretty good. So if you're looking for something to watch, I definitely recommend The Righteous Gemstones. Again, it's not anything to do with sci-fi, but it is funny. If you're just looking for something that makes you smile, I definitely would like this. And if you're worried about the religious aspect of it, I would not consider myself a religious person per se. And they kind of do it in a way that parodies itself, but also shows you why people like this believe what they believe so powerfully. And for me, that was pretty insightful because I am not in this kind of world, and to kind of see it from this bird's eye view, it was pretty interesting. I mean, I know that this is mostly a parody and the characters are very outlandish, but there are real scenes of family in the show and how they deal with religion and how it helps them with grief and things of that nature. And I just think that's really an interesting part of the series as well. So I highly recommend The Righteous Gemstones. Only 2 seasons out so far, 18 episodes total. So you definitely have time to binge that as well if you're looking for something to laugh to. But let me know, are you a fan of The Righteous Gemstones? And will you be watching the upcoming 3rd season? And then finally, I want to talk about a trailer for another series that is not necessarily sci-fi, but again, I'm a huge fan, and that is Justified. Justified is a series that stars Timothy Oliphant as a deputy U.S. Marshal named Raylan Givens. This series is adapted from the works of author Elmore Leonard. Now, if you're not familiar with him, he is extremely well regarded. He also wrote the story Jackie Brown, which is adapted to a movie by Quentin Tarantino. And the series does a really good job, I think, of adapting his works. They don't just use the stuff with Raylan Givens. They kind of adapt other stories and make it into their own narrative, which I thought was pretty cool. The first season was released in 2010, and it ran for 6 seasons on the FX network. Now, I remember when it was first released, and I wasn't a huge fan because it was released at the same time as Sons of Anarchy, and I was always much more into Sons of Anarchy, so I never really paid much attention to Justified. But a few years ago, I got into it, and funny story, the reason I got into it is because of Walton Goggins. Walton Goggins plays one of the best characters ever named Boyd Crowder on the series Justified. I got into liking Walton Goggins after his performance on Sons of Anarchy. If you've ever seen it, he plays a hilarious, really out there character on Sons of Anarchy and really shows his range as an actor. And I really, because of that, I really like wanted to see other things that he starred in to see like how crazy he could get. And man, he plays the best outlaw in Justified. But unfortunately, this miniseries titled City Primeval takes place in Miami and not Kentucky. And from what we're hearing, it doesn't seem to include any of the original cast except Timothy Olyphant. Now, in the Elmore Leonard novels about Raylan Givens, he does travel around a lot, so that's not too far off. But just fans of the series Justified not just fell in love with Raylan Givens, they fell in love with all the characters, and especially Boyd Crowder. So it's sad to hear that he's not going to be involved in this project. But one cool casting note is that Timothy Olyphant's actual daughter will play his daughter in this miniseries. Now, if you watch the original Justified, you know that his daughter was born during the series. I think it was during season 2. So if you watch the trailer, she looks to be at least 18 or in that like high school age. So they must be fast forwarding a little bit to age her up and make it, so she's not a 13-year-old and she's 18 or whatever they have her in the series. But I thought that was really interesting that his actual daughter is playing his daughter in the miniseries. There was also a really interesting story that came out about the filming of this while they were filming in Chicago, my hometown. Apparently, an actual shooting took place while they were filming some like crazy scene, and they had to stop production, and then they came back, and then another shooting took place not too long after. So, way to represent Chicago. But as I mentioned, the story is supposed to take place in Miami. So maybe there are just some scenes taking place in Chicago, or perhaps Chicago takes the place of Miami because maybe it's easier to film in Chicago or what, I don't know. I mentioned that Walton Goggins' character, Boyd Crowder, will not be a part of this series, but they did get another Boyd to play the villain, and that is Boyd Holbrook. He plays the villain who I think is known as the Oklahoma Wildman. He is supposed to be just a crazy out there killer. More so, I think, a psychopath than what Boyd Crowder was. Boyd Holbrook is the actor's name, by the way. It's not the character's name. I don't remember the character's name right now, but I know that they call him the Oklahoma Wildman. But anyway, Boyd Holbrook, he's been in a lot of things. I remember him from Logan. He's played both a hero and a villain at times. Like he was a hero in one of the Predator movies, but I prefer him as a villain. So I'm pretty psyched for him to play this villain in this series. And I think he'll play well off Timothy Olyphant because I think he has some of the same characteristics that Olyphant does. This story for this miniseries is also adapted from an Elmore Leonard work, but the original did not include the character Raylan Givens, so they kind of adapted it to include this character and make him the main hero. This miniseries will be released on July 18th. And because it's on FX, I didn't even know FX was still out there. So way to go, FX. I don't have cable anymore. I've had streaming services for years now. So I was really surprised to find out that FX still exists. But yeah, it's still out there. And it will be released on FX weekly starting July 18th, not June 18th, July 18th. So if you've never seen Justified before, there are 6 seasons. You can binge that as well. And I definitely like it. I think it's really good. There are some really interesting characters that they come across. I really like his boss, and I really like this character named Tim that's like this sniper with PTSD. I always thought that Tim was going to turn out to be a villain later on, and he would be an awesome villain because he worked with Raylan Givens so long. I thought that they were going to do that eventually because he's so cold and like kind of weird, and he does heroic things, but he also does things that it's like, whoa, dude, like you probably should have thought a little bit before you just shot that guy in the head. So I always thought they were going to bring him back as a villain, but they never did. But let me know, are you a fan of Justified? Are you going to be watching this miniseries titled City Primeval? Are you sad that Boyd Crowder will not be involved and none of the original cast will be involved besides Timothy Olyphant? Or are you just a fan of the Raylan Givens character and will be watching it for that? Let me know in the comments below. Well, that's all I have this time. Thank you very much for joining me. Again, the best way to support me is to hit that like button, tell YouTube to show this video to more people, and also to subscribe so that YouTube will let you know when my future videos come out. Also, don't forget this Thursday, June 8th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be doing a live stream, so come join me, ask me questions, watch me play Star Trek Resurgence, and let's have some fun together. But until then, I'm Eric, and thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?